And coming to Marin was a shock. I was blown away by the natural beauty, but I was also blown away by how beautiful the houses were, especially around campus.
Urban area, but what Marin has is it's got this juxtaposition of this urban environment with an immense amount of green space.
There's a lot of green and there's a lot of people, really friendly people. I saw there was definitely a lot of really pretty houses, and then there was a lot of really not pretty houses.
There's a very big divide. There's a lot of poor housing and a lot of really, really expensive housing, and not very much in the middle, which is where I'm from.
They're just so expensive. There's nothing more that I could say. It's a lot. There's a lot of definitely not affordable to students. Nope, I cannot live off campus for that reason.
I rent a room with apartment with 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a kitchen. I split it with 6 other people just to afford it.
In the entire Bay Area, the home prices and just rental units are just really starting to be very acutely unaffordable for most people, especially for students.
Well, they're devastating for people who don't earn between $150,000 and $200,000 per family. It's virtually impossible to own a home in this part of Marin County.
Marin County's natural beauty, close proximity to San Francisco, and the majestic Pacific coastline make it a highly desirable place to live. Many of the students who tour Dominican University of California are mesmerized by the beautiful architecture. However, Marin County has the second most expensive rental market in the United States. According to the Marin Community Development Agency, a single-family detached home costs around $1 million and requires an annual household income of almost $200,000 to afford these normal mortgage payments. As a result of the high prices, many have been forced to call the streets of Marin their home.
I am Professor Perry Guevara. I am an assistant professor of English at Dominican University of California. Originally from Birmingham, Alabama, but I spent the last 7 years in Atlanta, Georgia. And coming to Marin was a shock. I was blown away by the natural beauty, but I was also blown away by how beautiful the houses were, especially around campus. I came out last summer to look at houses and to hopefully buy one in Marin close to campus, but realized that the home prices were really high, and the homes that I could afford had serious issues with them. They needed lots of renovation, many of them had structural issues. There was one house in Sausalito that I found that I bid on, but was unfortunately outbid, and I ended up losing that property. So after losing that property, I decided to look East Bay for more affordable housing options. Most houses near San Rafael were over $700,000, easy. And many of them ranged up well into the millions, which was beyond what I wanted to spend for a particular property. And those prices were intimidating, especially coming from Atlanta, where the cost of living is much lower, real estate's much lower. In Atlanta, I lived in a 35-story high-rise on the 25th floor, concierge, parking, pool, spa, club room, exercise room. I mean, it really was a different standard of living for what I could afford, but then coming to the Bay Area, I realized that I couldn't maintain that same lifestyle out here because of how expensive things were.
I'm Amy Young, and I'm a professor in natural science and mathematics, which is part of the School of Health and Natural Sciences. So I'm originally from New York City, and so when I first got out to California, the thing that I was super impressed with was there was this really neat balance out here between having urban environments, but that the urban environment, you know, while being like a true city, had all of this green space right around it. Marin has is it's got this juxtaposition of this urban environment with an immense amount of green space that's really accessible. I don't live in Marin County. I live in Alameda County. So I live in the city of Berkeley. So I come from Berkeley and I come over the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge every day, and I get to Dominican. Well, interestingly, so this is my 9th year at Dominican, and when I first started It's only 19 miles from my house to school. And when I first started, the commute was really, really, really easy because it was a reverse commute. So it was much more the case that people lived in Marin and commuted to the East Bay. And so I would come across the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge and there would be lines going in the other direction, but there was no difficulty for me getting here. And in the last 2 or 3 years, I've noticed that it's an equal commute almost in both directions. And sometimes I've even felt like it's heavier in the direction that I'm going. So I do feel like there are times that it's better for me to have classes and times it's worse for me to have classes because I can get stuck in traffic, and that wasn't the case 5 or 6 years ago. So I didn't look at Marin because to me it looks like it is slightly more suburban, but I do have friends who have either moved to Marin or have looked to move to Marin. I have one friend who did move to Marin, but her family, has high-paying professional jobs. And then the people who I do know who moved to Marin, for the most parts, moved further and further and further out in Marin. So instead of living in places like San Rafael or San Anselmo or Sausalito or Mill Valley, they're living further north, moving up into Petaluma and Sonoma and Healdsburg. To live closer to the urban center. If you remember that the urban center is San Francisco, it's too expensive.
I'm Henry Schreibman, and I'm on the faculty of Dominican University and Sonoma State. Well, my first career that brought me out here was the headmaster of a very large private school system. And I was very well compensated after the first couple of years. The first couple of years were tough. Then they wanted to keep me. Then they started to increase my salary so I could keep up. Now that I'm, since '05, became a college professor, I basically work at 2 different universities and have other businesses that I run so that I can continue to keep pace with this, what is a very expensive area still. But then I had a unified salary, and the other real key is that I've always lived below my means. My children didn't go to summer camps and didn't have the extra activities. They had us, they had excellent schooling, and they had a safe neighborhood. But they didn't have a lot of the other luxury items that some of the students had here. So yes, I am Jewish, and I did come out here to start a Jewish day school system. So when I was first here, having poured every dollar of our lives into being able to barely afford this housing in Marinwood, which was a very accessible neighborhood, a board member from my school came to visit and drop something off, and as she walked in, she went, "This is such a cute starter home." And I actually looked at my wife and I didn't know what to say. And so she's walking around, we showed her the place. And she says, "So cute, and the kids are so adorable, and you're such a lovely young couple in your starter home." And I said, "You got to really tell me, what's a starter home?" And she went, "Well, you're really in a home that's sort of at the bottom of the bottom, and you're just getting started, and eventually you'll build your way up." And I went, "Every dollar I own is in this place. Every cent I've ever smelled, and every cent that I've ever loaned so I could live here." It's become very clear in the period that I've been here that the county actively talks about equal access for housing and more affordable low-income housing, and it builds them at best, 40 or 50 units in a decade. That's not going to solve the problem. But if you are able to be that person who is educated and come from a professional world and save your money, then you might be able to afford this area. But basically it's heavily driven by this concept of the inequality of income in America. And even the school systems that are more depressed because where is the zip code?
Lauren, I'm a biology major here at Dominican University, and I'm currently a freshman living in the dorms, and I'm currently looking for apartments here in San Rafael, so it's kind of rough right now because everything is so expensive. Okay, well basically I knew I couldn't afford it by myself because of how much it actually is, but I found a group of friends that I'm really close with, and we decided to split the payment in 5, so we'll be paying around like $500, $600 each. The prices are going up and everyone's getting the apartments fast. Like, We visited Deer Valley at one day, and then the next day we said, can we keep it on hold? And she said that another group of people already got it for hold. So I looked into EssexApartmentsHomes.com, and it shows the number right here. We called that number and we set up an appointment, and then we also looked at the pictures. So then after that, we looked at their office hours, and then we got an appointment. And when we got an appointment, we basically told her like where we're coming from, how many people, and like all the requirements that we need in order to book the apartment. And then for if we are gonna put a down payment and really sign off and get this apartment, she told us that we each need to do these rental applications, which include basically our parents' information, if we have a pet, employment, and like they ask for what our parents do and how much they make. And when we saw the different numbers, we're like, okay, sounds more reasonable than this one, because basically Highlands is a little bit above our spending rate. It's too much for what we are right now, because we all don't have jobs right now, and we're all pre-nursing, bio, so we're really like into school and we're really busy. We don't have time to work right now, so we would have to get the cheaper option. Everything is really expensive, and I don't think it's really fair for like the students at Dominican to be paying this much. We already pay for our tuition, that's so much, and then on top of that we have to pay a lot for housing.
Home for All is a public awareness campaign to provide information on homelessness in Marin and inspire community members and businesses to contribute to the lasting solutions to prevent and end homelessness in Marin County. Homelessness creates a financial burden and a loss of human dignity. On Friday, January 27th, Marin County conducted their 2017 point-in-time count to understand the number of homeless individuals living throughout the county. Every day in Marin, there are over 930 men, women, and children who experience homelessness, and another 4,300 who are at risk of losing their housing. Homelessness occurs when an individual or families are unable to acquire or maintain housing that they can't afford. According to Home for All, in Marin County, a household must work 169 hours a week at minimum wage in order to afford a moderately priced 2-bedroom apartment. So while Marin County is being surrounded by beautiful multi-million mansions, we're taking it at the cost of someone else.